welcome to Write On, the podcast from Final Draft. We are here to talk about all things screenwriting. I'm your host, Phil Galasso. Today's interview is with Josh Rubin, writer-director of the new movie Werewolves Within. In the film, a snowstorm traps town residents together inside the local inn, where newly arrived forest ranger Finn and postal worker Cecily must try to keep the peace and uncover the truth behind a mysterious creature that has begun terrorizing the community.
Ranger? You look like you just seen a corpse.
Well, the roads are effed, and something's wrong with the generator.
Which generator?
All of them.
Can't get on the internet!
Also, there's a dead body under your porch.
Holy!
Probably a wolf.
What are you, like a wolf detective now, Marcus?
Who knows who or when it's gonna kill next.
I think we can all agree that it's unsafe outside, and there's safety in numbers. Out of curiosity, who is packing? Well, we're having a good old-fashioned sleepover.
With guns, though.
With guns, yes.
Everything about this predator is unorthodox. It's not human. It's not canine. It's one of them.
One of what?
A lycanthrope.
A what?
Lycanthrope.
A werewolf.
How could it gotten in here? How did it get out?
Who says it got out?
Maybe.
I'm a werewolf.
Maybe you're a werewolf. Maybe you're a werewolf. You're a werewolf. You're a werewolf. You're a werewolf. Maybe we're all werewolves. Are we really in a Mexican standoff right now?
Baby, don't say Mexican. Just stand up.
Josh and host Sharday Sellers discussed how he pitched the project, shooting in the Hudson Valley, and more. Check it out.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Sharday here, and I have a special guest today who I've interviewed once before, and now we're actually best friends. We have bracelets, we braid each other's hair, we make chicken together. It's very personal. It's Josh Rubin, director of Werewolves Within. Hello, Josh.
Hello. How the hell are you?
Hello. I love that. I can't fit it in. I'm sorry. I'm not as good as you are. First of all, okay, so this is really great. I got the awkwardness out of the way because now I can actually talk to you as a friend, because I got to watch the movie last night and I actually sent you a DM that I was laughing out loud. Like, there's some movies you watch that are funny and you're like, oh, that's really funny. And then there's other movies you watch that are so funny that you're laughing that you have to rewind to get the rest of the information. And that's what I did in this movie.
Oh my God, that's a major compliment coming from you. Well, thank you. That means a howl of a lot.
A howl of that. No, I kid you not, you guys. In the first 5 seconds of this movie, I sent him a DM and I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be laughing at this, but this is the funniest thing I have ever seen. And I'm just in bed and my dog's like, what is wrong with you? And then the entire movie, I had to rewind. And okay, so they give you these screeners, but they don't have subtitles, which I think you should have subtitles, because I feel like the jokes are so funny and the banter is so witty that I was missing it because they're so fast. So I was like, oh, if I had subtitles, I could keep up, but I have to rewind. Anyway, let's start from the top, because I know you're about to go into all this press. So I'm trying to ask you questions that you don't have to answer a million times, but I do want to ask you, how did this project fall into your lap? Like, take us through the process of how Werewolves Within came to you.
Well, it didn't so much fall into my lap as it was just kind of like, hey, do you want to come pitch on directing this thing? So I was a hired gun. Ubisoft's Women's Film and Television Fellowship program is how Mission Wolf kind of developed and wrote this script based on, an IP of her choosing. She chose Werewolves Within. She wrote this incredible kind of like Fargo-like script, and the producers at Vanishing Angle, the guys behind The Wolf of Snow Hollow, another werewolf movie, they saw Scare Me. They saw an early cut and they were like, would you like to look at this script? Do you want to pitch on this movie? The Ubisoft folks, they dug Scare Me. And I was like, holy crap. Yeah. So I was a little nervous about the prospect of a Ubisoft video game movie until I opened Mishna's script and I was like, oh no, this reads like Arachnophobia. It reads like Fargo. It feels like Hot Fuzz. It feels like I can see it paced up like Clue. And I saw a real cool opportunity there. And just from a personal note, it felt like, it felt like where I grew up. It felt like people I grew up with, that small town kind of mentality where everybody knows your shit, even though you'd prefer that not be the case. And yeah, how they don't really take well to newcomers, even in some cases.
I have to agree with Hot Fuzz, especially. That's all I kept thinking. I was like, this is very reminiscent of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. It's got that like quick, witty, almost British-like sense of humor. Like you said, Fargo, where it's like it's really quick and you have to pay attention, which I love. I love that so much. And the actors in this are so freaking fabulous. First of all, let's just start off with Sam Richardson. Impeccable casting, a brilliant choice. I need to know how he became involved in this because I've never loved a human being more than when I watched him in this film. I just wanted to hug him every scene he was in. So flawless.
I knew he was always on my list from the get-go. I knew that if we're talking about a true newcomer to a town like Beaverfield, I am from a predominantly white, small mountain town, and I wanted him to essentially Finn coming into this town. He is sort of the epitome of a newcomer. Not only does he not look like many of the residents in Beaverfield, but he's also coming in this position of authority. So he's got to like enact a bit of authority to people who have lived in this town for some time. And I just thought that texture is it's going to add a hell of a lot. It's going to put the movie, I think, on another level just from the optics alone, and you don't have to play into anything else, stakes or otherwise. And Sam is not only a comedic superhero, but he's also playing to the top of his dramatic ability. So he's like, that great Guillermo del Toro quote that I keep butchering, but where he talks about comedic actors operating at 100% because they're already impeccably funny as it is, but they're also like turning their dramatic gears. And that's what he's doing. He's like doing his funny thing, but he's also like playing vulnerable. And I think that's why it comes off with this like Tom Hanks sincerity. It was just a thrill to have him come aboard. It's essentially once he did, that's how we were able to sort of continue the momentum of casting. Cause I certainly couldn't do it, all on my own merit from, having done a $300,000 Shudder indie.
Which, I mean, come on. That Scare Me is amazing, which I think I caught a little Scare Me nod in it.
Possibly.
I think I did. I can't say it because I want people to watch the movie, but I caught a few nods in there. And then one of them was like a Scare Me nod. And I was like, ooh, I see it. I got it. Let me go back because I know the listeners are going to yell at me if I don't ask this question. Let's go back to pitching for this movie. Okay. So with Scare Me, you're the writer, director, producer, actor, like whatever else you did on that movie. This year actually just coming in as a director. So you have this, first of all, amazing script by, is Michelle, is her name?
Mishna Wolf, believe it or
Michelle
not. Her last name
is Wolf. Right. Yeah, I saw that in the credits and I said, perfect. That's perfect. A wonderful script. Dialogue's all there. Everything needs to be there. So what are you coming in and how are you pitching yourself as director for this project?
Ooh, that's a killer question. So part of what you want to do as a director, if you're pitching on a feature film, is you're going to want to bring in a picture deck. And the way I do it is I always start personal. Here's a little bit about me. And the first thing that opens up Werewolves Within, the director's deck, is a picture of me as a chubby kid with a bowl cut wearing a Looney Tunes sweatshirt, talking about how I grew up in the mountains of the Hudson Valley. And I would imagine a werewolf / Dracula-like creature my cousin Dan and I called Wolfula that we would like scare ourselves making up stories about, roaming the field next to the farmhouse my mom grew up on, which is where they live now. I talked about essentially why it was personal to me and why it felt personal to me as a kid with a big imagination, but also one being from a small town like Beaverfield, and then going into movies it reminds me of. So you have, your next slide is like pictures of Hot Fuzz, Jaws, Fargo, and Arachnophobia, and why it kind of, it makes me think of, extraordinary circumstances and normal folks kind of having to deal with that in that sort of Stephen King, Amblin-esque sort of sense. And then you talk about everything from how I would punch up the script on a comedic level, what I would cut even to a degree, but here's how I would take a page that has some pre-existing jokes, and here's how I would add a joke or trim it to make it funnier or punchier or jump cut from this moment to another moment. And then, talking about everything from like tone, an Edgar Wright pace, but playing emotion for real, wanting a Jerry Goldsmith-esque score to like pull on those heartstrings, that kind of Amblin sort of vibe, so to speak, to like cinematographer, to pitching a cinematographer I had worked with before, who we actually weren't able to get her, but we were wonderfully able to rope in Matthew Wise, who had worked on pretty much everything that Taylor Swift had done, which is sort of incredible.
Brilliant.
This is like one of his first features. And a few other sort of, pretty much anything you'd want to touch on. Casting, here's some casting ideas. And Sam Richardson was always in my list. George Basil, who's Marcus, was always up there, as well as Rebecca Henderson, I believe, and George Basil. So, or unless I already said George. Yeah, George. Oh, Chernus. Sam, those were some actors that were kind of already on my list of folks I saw in this film. I wanted to have this troupe of folks. So yeah, that, and the deck took me 2 weeks of like 9 to 9 working on it and making it perfect. And then I go into Ubisoft and I plug in a USB cable and I project it onto their TV screen, and I'm straight up pitching and walking it through with like Jason Altman and Margaret Boykin and Andrew Lieberman and Matthew Miller from Vanishing Ava went in with me, and they just watch you talk for 45 minutes and ask you questions, rake you over the coals. And you just got to show them you're prepared to do a film with, a dozen cast members in a faraway place.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay, so everyone, just to recap for you, start with the personal, do some references, talk about what you would change, the director, tone, casting, cinematography. Now let's talk technical real quick, because people like these questions. Are you using Canva? Are you using WordPress? Like, what are you using to design?
Oh, to design. It's funny. So my fiance, Lauren, who's a music video director, showed me Keynote, which everybody has on their Mac. I didn't realize it was this easy. I'm like the least technically proficient person ever. You literally drag images from like shotdeck.com or Film Grab and just like look up movies that might feel like, your sort of vibe, and then drag it into Keynote, and you just add text and boom, you can export as a PDF. And that's how I do everything. I've pitched every TV show I've pitched or movie I'm writing. I also do a visual deck with you. You really have to. There's no way people are kind of going to feel the movie any better. That's immensely helpful. Keynote is great. I'm sure there are other ways to do it, but that's my ride or die.
Brilliant. And one last question about pitch, and then we're going to move on back to the movie. How much time? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? Like, did you practice?
I definitely practiced. I like read it and reread it and reread it. And, you want to make it as conversational as you and I are just kind of having a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Like play with the kind of dialogue as it all, or if you're describing your approach to your best friend at some bar. Okay, so here's what I would do. So first of all, like before we get into the whole thing, I was a kid who didn't have many friends, but was scared by this stuff. I love these movies. And when I read the script, it made me think of these movies because what I would do is this. I would set it in a location like this, just like where I grew up in, because that's what, again, my personal relationship to this film. Such and such, and then pretty much anything else you want it. The lighting, in the first act of the movie, I want it to feel like, bright and Pleasantville and arachnophobia. Act 2, when things go a little bit darker, I want Carpenter-esque shadows and creepy dark corners and Agatha Christie eyebrow-raising creepiness. And Act 3, when shit hits the fan, I want Ready or Not, Monster Squad green. I want blood on the Hereditary, Firelight, whatever. Just kind of showing them that you're thinking about the progression of it all. When I'm actually pitching, this is I want to say a 50-page document, which I will post someday in some iteration for folks after all the spoilers are kind of out in the open to show what I did. Probably between 30 and 40 minutes of talking. Maybe even between 25 and 40 minutes, depending. But the more detailed, I think, the better. You do want your producers to have skin in the game, but as far as you're covering like why you're the best person for the job for this movie, you're golden. You don't really need to touch on much more than that. And then there'll be a Q&A after. Tell me a little bit more about why you would shoot it on anamorphic lenses. Well, because Silver Bullet was shot on anamorphic lenses because Carpenter's movie was shot in anamorphic lenses, et cetera, et cetera.
What's the timeline for this so they saw an early cut of Scare Me. And when did you pitch this? Obviously it was before pandemic because you went in person.
Oh,
so what's that timeline there?
I can't remember specifically when I pitched it. I think I found out. So Scare Me was delivered and locked before September of
2018, 2019.
I guess it would have been because we were about to go to Sundance. So it would have been locked by the end of 2019. And then in September of 2019, I found out I got the job. And then in January of 2020, we went to Sundance. And at Sundance, I was in prep for Werewolves. So I literally got to Sundance on a Friday. I saw Thursday night, saw the movie on a Friday. Saturday had like a day of press, and Sunday I flew home because Monday I had to be
fancy.
Ground.
Are you so fancy?
It's a miracle I didn't get celiac because holy crap. Well, it felt fancy. It's amazing I didn't get pneumonia or
pneumonia. Where did you shoot Werewolves Within?
We shot it in the Hudson Valley, not far from where we shot Scare Me / where I grew up. So Scare Me was Woodstock, New York. I stayed at my parents' house. And then Fleischman's is about 40 minutes, I don't know, northeast or something of Woodstock. And that's where Jim Jarmusch shot The Dead Don't Die.
Oh, okay. And then so all that snow, because it was in my mind while I was watching. I was like, is this snow real? Because it's so snowy. Was that all real conditions?
It was mostly real, yeah, because we were shooting in February. But the funny thing is, we have volatile weather up there in the mountains. Like one day it can be sunny and all of it can melt. And like 5 minutes later, you're getting snowfall. So in the movie, you're actually seeing real snowfall in some scenes. In other scenes, you're seeing starch. And in other scenes, you're seeing CGI snow. It's pretty wild. But the smartest thing we did, or our wardrobe folks did, David Tabbert and Rachel and Kelsey, shout out, was they took practical starch flakes and they put it on the wardrobe for each character. So the transition, if we're coming out of digital snow into an interior location, you're actually seeing the flakes in their hair, on their wardrobe, and that was major. That was a huge trick to make it work.
Oh, that's brilliant. Because I was really like, gosh, these conditions, these poor people having to be outside this much and just freezing cold weather. But it sounds like it was a mix of both. So I want to ask, you actually helped me over the weekend because I directed my first piece in years and I was nervous as hell. And you gave me some really great advice. And I want to just bring it out to the listeners right there. Because you're dealing with some legend actors, some really veteran actors. So And you've obviously directed before, so it's not a big thing, but you're just coming off of Scare Me. Maybe not everyone's familiar with your work and they're just like, who is this guy? How do you bridge the gap between these veteran actors and yourself to go please trust me. I know what I'm doing. Let's just get this done. Because that's my biggest anxiety piece is these actors probably think I'm an idiot.
Communication, if you're directing it, it's one thing if you're doing a commercial and you can't get a hold of Gronk, I'm going to do a commercial, Michael's commercial with Gronk, which I've done. I can't get a hold of NFL's Gronk. So I'll probably talk to him on the morning when, the morning of the commercial when he's getting his makeup done. Hey, how are you? Here's the run of the day. Any questions, any concerns, anything else? John Badham, who's a brilliant director who did, Short Circuit and Blue Thunder and all this sort of brilliant with Saturday Night Fever. He wrote a whole book called John Badham on Directing. And he talks, his whole first, 1/3 of this book is about communication. Everything is about talking to your actors. And a question, I called every single actor with the exception of maybe George, who I'd worked with a whole bunch, Marcus. And I said, how do you like to be directed? How do you like to be talked to? Do you like to be left alone? Do you want me to fuck off? Do you want me to just have this homework kind of done now? Do you want to talk about your motivation? So you get, folks like Sam are like, I'm really easy, but don't give me a line reading on how to, deliver a line. Obviously, I know how to do that. And I was like, well, obviously, but anything else? He goes, no, I'm easy as hell. Glenn Fleshler, I've worked with everyone from Todd Phillips to Cary Fukunaga. I'm easy, I don't have any notes, Michael Chernus doesn't so much have notes on directing, but he wants to know what the tone is. And every actor I'm talking to, I'm telling them, because they're all up on their heels a bit. You know, as Sam was saying, he's like, "Ooh, it's called Werewolves Within, and this is this dude's second movie. Like, give me a little bit more information." So I was like, I want to make Fargo if it were an Amblin movie. I want all the irreverence and awkward coughing and sharp dialogue and, you know, hitting your knee on the coffee table kind of awkwardness and normal quirky folk stuff. But I also want lens flare and swelling orchestral tracks and nice pacing. And everybody was like, oh, okay. So once you describe what you're going for and how, and you're just letting them know, like, not only will I be prepped, I'm not going to be up your ass, like giving you line readings, but I know what I'm doing and you're going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And the best thing you can do as a director is just, you know, is be a great first base coach. Like, hey, you're good. Like, I like that. I don't love that. Is too much, you know. I gave actors notes, everything from, you know, leaving them totally alone, like that's absolutely brilliant. Keep doing that, to watch the way your mouth is ajar during and it might be distracting. Just be conscious of that. Bring a little consciousness to what you're doing. And if they ever push back, which they never did, because I'm an actor, I know how to talk to actors. You know, they'll ask for clarification. I'll just kind of explain why or show them the monitor or whatever else, you know. But the big thing is that you want to make them feel supported enough so that then within the confines of those boundaries, they can then like bounce off the walls and play jazz. But the bottom line, I think the most important thing I've learned asking, you know, I'm doing a project with Noah Segan right now, has done a ton of, you know, all of Rian Johnson's projects. You know, I'll ask him or read these books, you know, hey, like, you know, what is it like working with actors who are just like, you know, at this like top tier level? And he goes, dude, they all want to be directed. Everybody wants to be directed. They just don't want to feel like you don't know what you're doing, because at that point, they'll feel like, you know, they're not going to get taken care of. So that's the biggest thing.
No, I love what you said, because I did an interview with Bruce Miller, you know, the showrunner for Handmaid's Tale, and he said something similar when it comes to his staff writers. He actually thinks staff writers should ask their showrunners, what do you need from me? Like, what do you really need for me to contribute? So I loved that. I never heard that before. Whereas this side of it, it's the, you know, directors are like the showrunners, and you're actually asking your team, what do you need from me? Like, how can I help you get your performance down? I think that's a really, really helpful tip, especially, you know, you're the one that told me in our DMs that like, it does, like, make a decision and stick by it and stand by it. And just like, it's better to stand by it and not know what you're doing inside than to visibly not know what you're doing. It's
okay to not have all the answers, but you have to be prepped. And at some point you're going to have to say, fuck it, let's just try it this way. And even if it's not 100% right, you're going to be able to go, ooh, like 86% was right. Let's kind of mold the rest, you know, the latter percent, you know, and make it 100.
So you couldn't get your cinematographer that you usually work with. So how did you land on the one for this movie?
We had a meeting. I mean, I looked at, I can't remember who had suggested Matt Wise, but I loved his work. I loved his stuff. And I told him point blank, I was like, my only concern about the stuff that you've done, because he hasn't done many features, was that his stuff all looked very crisp. He worked a lot with like Joseph Kahn, for example. So the lensing was very, very crisp. And I wanted to go for a bit more of an not old film grain kind of a look, but I wanted older lenses, milkier lenses that kind of had that Goonies-like look.
Yes.
As opposed to something that's like so sharp you can see their pores. And he was like, well, look, that's the style of, you know, the folks I'd worked with before. If I'm doing a Capital One commercial, those are the lenses I'm going to work with. But show me what you're looking for. And so I'd show him how Bad Moon was photographed, or Silver Bullet, or Monster Squad, you know, films that I wanted to kind of emulate aesthetically, Carpenter films. And it was like, great, let's do that. Here's the aspect ratio and everything else. So we had an interview, and, you know, you kind of put your cinematographer to task. How do you like to work? Can you work under pressure? What do you like under pressure? I want to learn from you. I hope you want to learn from me. A lot of it with a cinematographer is like, you want to suss them out without flat out asking them if they have an ego and they're going to like, you know, dick swing on set. If like, they're going to like play in the trenches with you, you know, and like, and roll up their sleeves and like really do the thing, and not like be on their phone playing some X-Men game while your guys are lighting. Like, they're really going to be in there with you.
You know how I feel about this, because personal relationships between directors and DPs is like my biggest anxiety. So you give me great advice. We have to wrap up, but I want to ask you one last question. And it's actually, normally we ask, what advice would you give your younger writer self? You've already answered that question. So check out the Scare Me podcast, you guys, if you haven't heard it. So I'm going to ask you a different question, which is, are you related to Joseph Rubin from Mikey? That's what the Afro Horror team told me to ask you, like, is Josh related to Joseph Rubin?
I'm not related to Joseph. Mikey, like
yes.
the Parma. Oh my God, I love Mikey. That's terrifying. I'm not related to Joseph Rubin or David Rubin or Jeff Rubin from College Humor. It's different spellings, but I think I was. And if I can give your filmmaker, your listeners a great piece of advice, by the way, tangentially, before I hop, like advice I just learned this yesterday. If you're pitching a movie, I finally learned how, like, the easiest way to describe how to pitch a film, and it's take a film that you love and that and write down what happens as if you were talking to your best friend, describing what happens in that movie in under 10 minutes. And for a total of 15 minutes, tack on an intro where you talk about why you're the best person to make this movie and why it's personal to you, and like some comps. So 15 minutes total. My intro, and then like, here's the movie, like beat by beat. And you can write out like, okay, Jaws, you describe Jaws. Maybe it's tedious, but like write out 10, 15 pages describing it. And it's like, oh my gosh, with enough tone and character, like that's the way to do it. And I was like,
yep.
My God, I always just pained over that process. So anyway, hopefully people can take a bit of advice using that, and it's useful.
That's brilliant. That's the same thing I tell writers about their log lines. If you're having trouble, like take a show that you love and write a log line for it because you know it. All right, I got some dates for you people. First of all, you're a week away from premiering at Tribeca. So scary because it's gonna kill, and I'm jealous already. I'm not jealous. I'm super excited for you. Werewolves Within comes out in theaters June 25th. Really quickly, are you gonna walk in the theater and watch it? Because I would.
Hell yeah! So if it's still playing at Alamo Drafthouse in LA after I get home on the 15th, I will be there. We can all go. Everybody, come with me.
Come with them. And then it will be on VOD everywhere on July 2nd for everyone else. But I'm so excited for you, Josh, my friend. This movie is going to kill. It's going to be so amazing. So we'll probably never get you on the podcast again after this. So thank gosh. No, you'll be too famous. Thank God. Thank gosh we got you here. Oh no. Thank you so much for doing this. I can't wait for everyone to love the movie as much as I do. And we'll see you guys next time on Right On.
You're the greatest. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks to Josh Rubin for coming on the show, and to Sade Sellers for a delightful chat. Werewolves Within will be released in theaters on June 25th and VOD on July 2nd. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review, and if you haven't already, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about future episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Draft Inc. and Instagram at Final Draft Screenwriting. This episode was produced by Kayla Guess with help from associate producer Emma Vranich. Music by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, right on.